Fallout 4 is a Bethesda Softworks role-playing game. I don't say that just to credit the studio up front. If you have any experience with the studio's other titles, it's the easiest way to say what you should expect. There's an overwhelming amount of new content here to love, with extensive systems and a host of improvements to the existing formula Bethesda has been iterating on for the last decade or so. The formula remains the same though, so if you've dumped any hours into Fallout 3 or Skyrim, you probably already have a decent idea whether you're on board or not. Fallout 4 stands as a monumental achievement in game design, world building, and time stealing. But despite marked improvements across the board, it can't quite escape the technical shortcomings and derivative writing that have become studio hallmarks. Don't get me wrong, if you like RPGs, a dystopian setting, or previous Bethesda games, you should absolutely play Fallout 4, and you'll probably deeply enjoy your time with it, as I did. Just don't expect a radical departure from what you've already known. Fallout 4 whisks you away from New Vegas' Mojave Desert back to Bethesda's East Coast stomping grounds, putting you in the shoes of a Boston vault dweller. One of the biggest improvements this new installment brings is the complete overhaul of the player character, manifesting itself as Bethesda's first voice protagonist. Except, of course, for the seminal Elder Scrolls Adventures Redguard. But, fuck Redguard. We don't talk about that. Gone are the days of the unnerving Oblivion phase zooming and awkward stand and talk of Skyrim, as dialogues now play with some nifty dynamic camera work and solid voice acting. Kind of reminiscent of how Mass Effect has handled dialogue in the past. But for the most part, it's exciting and looks pretty great, with the notable exception of Bethesda's facial animation technologies still lagging pretty far behind the industry. The Uncanny Valley isn't quite a strong enough term to describe some of the horrifying, oh god, what is happening to this person's face? Do they need a doctor? Level of contortion that NPCs undergo while trying to deliver their lines. I'm sure those who lean in harder to the actual role-playing elements of the series will bemoan being shoehorned into a single voice option. It would be nice to be able to choose from multiple voices during character creation, a la Saints Row, but even the as-it-is edition of player character voice acting goes a long way to flesh them out as more than just a player surrogate. I won't delve into story details, but suffice it to say that the writing bears more resemblance to New Vegas' character-driven intricacy than Fallout 3's flat emotional appeals. The backdrop of the Commonwealth's mysterious institute and android-catalyzed paranoia explores a part of the Fallout universe that we haven't seen much of before, and allows for some pretty great story beats that edge more into the noir territory that New Vegas' best storylines and quests were steeped in. There are a whole host of companions to help you in your fight. Interactions with these characters provide some of the best moments this game has to offer, with each companion feeling like they legitimately have goals within the world, other than to serve as a pack mule and bullet sponge. It's not terribly deep, but it does create a sense of place and engenders some amount of a level of personal investment. Helping flesh out the proceedings even further are the genuinely impressive set-piece moments. I can't really divulge any without spoiling things that are best experienced organically, but suffice it to say that the Wasteland feels more alive and of a grander scale than ever before. Despite these across-the-board improvements, the writing fails to be revolutionary beyond the walls of Bethesda's own studio. Video game writing has come a long way. For example, this year's deeply personal, narrative-driven The Witcher 3 affected me as profoundly as any piece of media has. But Fallout 4 falls short of these marks, instead retreading well-worn tropes. And while it's pretty cool to see some Blade Runner and Fallout, it would also be cool to see some more nuanced, affecting writing coming out of Bethesda. Well, the companions are certainly better than the dreaded cartoons of Fallout 3. They fail to reach the heights that were reached over 15 years ago with classic RPGs like Planescape Torment. And the main quest, while affecting at parts, fails to meet the standards Bethesda themselves set with 2002's Morrowind, which remains one of the single most unique acts of world building in video games as a medium. Fallout 4's lead voice actress said the game was an action movie with heart, and that feels pretty apropos. While there's certainly room for big budget explosion-y fun, media like Mad Max Fury Road this year has shown that dumb fun and thoughtful, intricate writing don't necessarily have to be mutually exclusive. The same narrative of better but not quite there can be echoed for Fallout 4's gameplay. Here, let's just bullet point some facets and revisions of gameplay that are pretty awesome. The world is way more vertical and far denser than anything Bethesda has made before. The weapon modification system allows for a far greater amount of customization and playstyle and helps incentivize exploration in areas that may not have a quest. That same praise can be given to the expanded loot and armor system and the addition of more unique loot drops. The addition of settlement building is, look, you know that satisfying feeling of building a perfect house in The Sims? Pulling up that old junk in Viva Pinata and planting the new, beautiful green grass? Yeah, I'll probably lose quite a few hours in my life to beautifying those little pockets of hope in the Commonwealth. Finally, Bethesda has realized what we really want isn't dragon slaying or bigger guns, it's interior decorating. The actual trigger pulling of combat feels way more satisfying than before, but still not up to par with even a decent first-person shooter, really. The decision to have time slowly creep forward during bats is good, though, and it helps build some great tension and lends a hectic, frenzied feel to the proceedings. And thank you, Bethesda, for just having a container or enemy's inventory pop up when you hover over them, and not making us go into a menu to look through all their crap. I can't give you enough adulation for this. The small touches of detail, like unique animations for each perk and each quest description, really stand out as just an extra level of polish. And as always, the mise-en-scène of the broken down buildings, howling wind, and distant gunfire is deeply immersive. Fallout is always really shown through in its moments of exploration for the sake of exploration. And seeing the bodies from the old world, piecing together their last moments from under the dust, is as deeply affecting as any quest in the game. But as was foreshadowed, all is not well. Fallout 4 is still plagued by many of the issues that have haunted past Bethesda efforts. Animations are stilted, awkward, and break immersion. AI pathfinding ranges from passable to abhorrent and occasionally game-breaking. As mentioned before, the facial animation most closely resembles some grotesque, marionette-esque contortion. The addition to settlement building customization is cool, but it feels too shallow, lacking the variety you would hope for. Sure, there's always the hope or knowledge that eventually I'll be able to mod in some more puppy pictures to my game, but right now there just aren't enough puppy pictures, or anything else for that matter, to choose from in the customization options. Speaking of things that need to be fixed, Bethesda's track record of releasing buggy as hell games remains untarnished. Most of the bugs I encountered were pretty harmless, if not amusing. Look, let's just take a look ourselves. However, in one instance, I ran into an issue where the entire town became hostile at me for seemingly no reason. This also happened to be the town where I needed to go next for the main quest. It wasn't an issue I could even fix with the console, so I just had to load my last hard save, which was about 50 minutes prior. Lesson learned: don't trust quick saves. Ever. While the sound design is uniformly excellent, I have similarly mixed feelings about the graphics. Some fancy new lighting effects and a staggering amount of detail and level design help balance out lackluster textures that fluctuate between perfectly fine and grimily low res. There are certainly some screenshot-worthy moments of beauty, but too often they're interrupted by lackluster distant LOD or a texture that looks straight out of the early 360 PS3 days. The loading screens can also be horrendously long, rivaling Bloodborne at times. I once had a loading screen for 2.5 minutes just to dump me from an interior to the main sandbox. I guess it's worth noting that the game was installed on my hard drive and not my SSD, but 2.5 minutes of my life gone. It's not my intention to come off as overly negative about the game. It is superior in nearly every way to every game Bethesda has produced before. It's their most ambitious, best playing, and prettiest project yet. And hell, I am looking forward to putting in a lot more hours post-release. Nonetheless, a creeping sense of sameness is encroaching kind of fast, and at some point bolting on new systems to an old framework just gives diminishing returns. Fallout 4 is worth your time and money, and a lot of the former at that, but it's also worth hoping that a studio with so much talent will soon take a look at their formula, and, much like the Wastes, rebuild from the ground up.